Today on BloombergQuint, we have Marc van Zadelhoff here with us from IBM. Marc, thanks so much for joining us on BloombergQuint.
Great to be here.
Marc, you look at cybersecurity globally for IBM. I wanted to start by asking you, when it comes to the recent cyber attacks that all of us have witnessed, we've seen how they brought individuals, governments, and companies globally to a standstill, even here in India.
Yeah.
Be it WannaCry, Petya, not Petya, other hackings and data breaches across the world and here in India. Do you think it's because all of us here are perhaps really underprepared for such attacks?
Yeah, no. Well, I mean, first of all, hackers are very sophisticated, right? And I'm sure you've covered this a lot in your investigations, Aayush, but they are on the dark web in encrypted forums, trading best practices, leveraging cloud, cognitive, artificial intelligence, and big data to do what they do. Mm-hmm. And so they're very sophisticated. And I think on the cybersecurity defense side, which is the side that obviously I'm on and all my customers are also here in India, we do like to obsess on very advanced techniques to stop these things. Mm-hmm. And then you look at things like WannaCry, and I think they confirm, one, hackers don't care about borders, right? India was the third highest impacted country when it comes to WannaCry. But the other piece is that it took advantage of very basic controls that were missing. Nothing advanced needed for these. It's patching, it's basic blocking that really helped customers. And we saw it in our customers, the ones that had leveraged some of our technologies, fairly basic technologies, frankly, around patching and other things. They did quite well. They had a good, in the United States, it was Mother's Day. So they had a very nice Mother's Day. Others had a pretty hard weekend.
Okay, you mentioned that India was one of the worst impacted when it came to WannaCry as well, and other ransomware attacks. But there's a recent IBM study which actually says that the cost of data breach in India has gone up by nearly 12% this year.
Exactly, yeah.
What do you attribute that to? Is that essentially because, again, we don't have those mechanisms and systems in place? Or is that because companies and the governments are not really looking at it as seriously as they are perhaps in other countries around the world?
Yeah, I think the costs are going up in most countries, right? So this is not exclusive to India. But what I do see here, as I've been in India, this is not my first time here, obviously, is I think the percentage of spending on IT security is still a little lower, right? The sense of urgency is not quite there. If you go to Europe, to the US, you see it's really a board topic. It's really become something that the CIO is starting to spend 5, 6, 7% of their budget on, the IT budget. Here it's probably more 2 or 3%, of spending going towards IT security of the IT budget. And so I think there is a need to kind of catch up on rolling out some of the capability. And as I said, not all of it is fancy and advanced. Some of it just is getting the basics right. Considering
that the cybersecurity business is actually growing so rapidly, you authored a blog where you spoke about the cybersecurity skills shortage all over the world.
Yeah.
And the number of unfilled positions really, by 2020, I think there's going to be nearly 1 million unfilled positions in the space.
Yeah, and I have the honor in IBM security of managing 8,000 people on my team. We hired 1,000 people last year.
Right.
Probably on track to do the same this year. So we know a lot about hiring skills, and what we found is an approach that IBM's leveraged across other areas as well, where there's skill shortage. We call it new collar, focusing on the new collar. So think about something like 1.2 million vacancies in cybersecurity by 2020 globally.
Right.
And so new collar is the idea that we can be all specific on certain diplomas and certifications people have, but in the new collar, emphasis is on bringing people in and teaching them on the job, leveraging artificial intelligence capabilities like what we've been doing with Watson to ramp them up quickly. And get these guys on board and productive rapidly. Sometimes they then go back and return to do their diplomas later, but focus on getting the skills in and ramping them up fast.
It's interesting you say that, Marc, because in India the popular perception is that everyone wants to go to engineering college or study computer science and then get in over here. But when I actually speak to a lot of cybersecurity experts, you find out that a lot of their teams are a lot of young teenagers who actually are white hackers or ethical hackers and understand the space perhaps better than a lot of the other people with degrees.
Yes, yeah.
So perhaps this new collar approach could work for a place like India as well?
I think so, yeah. And actually the CTO of my business is a college dropout that founded a company and that we acquired years ago. So I mean, I think there's lots of examples of success there, and I do think there's a certain mindset of somebody that's just into the ethical hacking, right? Taking things apart, the penetration testing. It requires intense curiosity, and we all see that in our kids in spades. And so I think it helps to be kind of just intellectually curious to be a good ethical hacker.
Right, Marc. Also, you mentioned cognitive, and And the IBM CEO, Ginny Rometty, was down here in India a few months ago, and she also said, and she did make a very strong pitch for the company's cognitive business in India, considering that we'll be one of the largest, perhaps, developer populations in the world by 2020. That's what she said. How does cognitive and cognitive capabilities, how do they actually come into the cybersecurity space? What's IBM doing with Watson that's so unique?
Sure, yeah, a number of things. So I have a fairly large set of capabilities, software capabilities in cybersecurity, and so we've been applying Watson to various parts of it, and I would bore you for a long time to talk about all the machine learning and artificial intelligence that we've brought into different parts, but part of the most interesting one that I think is a net new area is we taught Watson the language of security. So it's called Watson Discovery Service. We took that capability that we have in IBM, and that's what's great about being at IBM. It's like a kid in a candy store leveraging the capabilities in cloud and cognitive that IBM has. Took Watson, trained it on security, and that's a fascinating process because you teach it how to read everything about security in the world, but you first have to teach it what a backdoor is in security. What's a bug on the in security? It's not a bug on the floor, it's a vulnerability in your software. All these terms, viruses and malware, command and control server. We taught it that, and then took several months to do that, and then we fed Watson over, by now it's probably over 2 million documents, 10,000 documents being ingested a day. So Watson has literally read every blog, every textbook, every certification program, every ounce of information available, and it ingests it and parses out relevant information that we can then inject into our analytics platform. So as people are essentially diagnosing their security leveraging our software, Watson's looking over their shoulder and saying, hey, yesterday, if that's what you're seeing in your company, that's a new attacker that we saw in Eastern Europe, and it's a new piece of malware, and these two are linked, right? So it's all of a sudden basically providing a very advanced analyst in the form of this corpus that it's learned. It's very fascinating.
No, it's interesting, Mark, because traditionally you talk about an antivirus or a firewall as your cybersecurity approach. This is a lot more. You're talking about cognitive capabilities. But when you do apply these cognitive technologies, could you explain to us and our viewers what kind of efficiencies does this bring in?
Yeah, so I agree with your point on antivirus and firewall, and I think it's we've understood years ago that they're necessary but not sufficient to this in this battle, in this defensive battle that we're fighting. And yeah, so I mean, we are seeing 50 or 60 times faster ability to interpret the data. So the problem with cyber, even leveraging some of my best analytics technologies, it's ingesting terabytes of data, sometimes billions of events at some of the large customers here in India on a given day, making sense of that, right? And we do a lot for it. But this is where, with Watson, all of a sudden it cuts down the time to process and understand an event by sometimes 50 times, right? So instead of it taking 3 or 4 hours to figure out, is this a false alarm? Is it a real deal? Is a hack happening? All of a sudden, within 2 or 3 minutes, they're coming to the conclusion. More accurate, so about 10 times more accurate, and obviously providing a lot more richness of data. So that's the kind of results you can get leveraging the technology.
Right, Mark. And also when we talk about cognitive, there's also so much talk about AI, mobile devices, IoT, Internet of Things. Now these are becoming commonplace in the tech world.
Yeah.
Now, but obviously there's a flip side, and very recently we saw how Elon Musk was talking about an AI apocalypse.
Sure.
Some said that those concerns were far-fetched, but the main point there was, be it a point of disagreement between Mark Zuckerberg or Elon Musk, there are people on either side of that debate.
Yeah.
Where do you stand when it comes to that? And I'm asking you this purely from a security lens or a security perspective.
Listen, I think we're a long way off from the danger zone that's been described out there. If we ever get there, by the way, what I'm seeing is augmented intelligence, right? So what we can do for our customers in a world with the skill shortages that we discussed earlier, our customers just need help, and AI, cognitive, call it what you like, machine learning algorithms that we're building in is really helping somebody who maybe is, again, newer to security become very advanced quickly. So I think it augments. There's not a lot of decisions that are going to be made without the human still involved in the decision making, in the, now I'm going to go do something about it. So I think right now it's a really helpful augmentation that is desperately needed in this market, given what the hackers are doing, right? So,
well, you see a lot of hackers joining forces all over the world. What's interesting is that IBM generates more than $2 billion from its security business, but you guys have still well, join hands with Cisco
Yes.
to combat
Yeah.
cybercrime, which
Yeah.
is interesting, considering Cisco's in the space as well. It's a strong player. What's that partnership all about, and how does it work?
Yeah, so that partnership, I'm very excited about that. And actually, we announced it a couple months ago, and our customers, I'm very excited about the customer response to that. Essentially, Cisco has an amazing capability of securing at the network and infrastructure layer and out to the cloud, right? We sort of sit above that with our security portfolio. We've been focusing, they're in the firewall business. We sit above that with our analytics portfolio, identity management, a whole bunch of capabilities, and it's let's say higher in the stack. It's not a judgment, it's just kind of where it sits technically.
Right.
And so what we were finding is a lot of customers, some of the huge airlines that we're helping to do all this analytics and identity management on, they were also using Cisco to do the network and kind of infrastructure security. And I've been for a while saying collaboration has to be the way that we go on the good side. We have to open up our systems, share data, integrate, because the hackers are doing that on these dark web forums that I discussed earlier. So that's what we're doing with Cisco. And during WannaCry, it was pretty cool. We were just, I think we were days before or after the announcement, actually, when WannaCry broke out. My threat researchers were on the phone with the Cisco Talos team. We were sharing samples, we were sharing data, we were building integrations between our products that would allow customers to respond faster. That's, to me, what it's all about. So that's been an exciting partnership, and more to do there.
Marc, it's interesting because when it comes to security, around India, really, there's been a big debate on privacy and security when it comes to our personal data that we give the government in terms of biometrics, iris. We're creating the biggest biometrics database in the world with Aadhaar. Considering all of these cyber attacks and the way the modern day cyber criminal has gotten wiser and wiser, and his methods too, do you think that cybersecurity can play a key role there to protect the privacy and security, and whether these concerns are justified?
Yeah, we've seen for a long time in Europe, for example, privacy being a real big driver of citizens' concerns. Just because of historical facts and events in Europe, they're very reticent to give up their private data. It's starting to happen in the US a lot more too. Younger generation, less worried about privacy, but even they are realizing, and everybody's realizing, and some of the stuff that you were talking about collecting here in India, it's immutable data, right? This is data about you that you can't change. You cannot change, your hometown where you were born. You can't change your mother's maiden name, or often you can't change your social security number in the US, for example. So that immutable data is precious, and once you give it up, and it's lost, you can't get it back, you can't change it. And it's also wonderful data for a hacker to do tax fraud, for a hacker to do medical fraud, right? So
identity theft.
Or identity theft, and do all those things with that. So this is where I think privacy is really creeping up as a key concern around citizens, especially around this immutable data. And
perhaps technologies like cognitive could play a key role in understanding what the criminal's doing in these cases.
Exactly, and absolutely, and the key also is to try and not have many copies of that data. And so what we do in this area, and again, it's all that same immune system approach I've been talking about and thinking through the different aspects of securing anything. In this area, what you see, for example, is what we call obfuscation of data. So where wherever you're storing that data, basically you're encrypting or tokenizing most of it. So you only get to see a little bit of your social security number, and the rest of it you need to basically decrypt, so that any of the administrators or anybody who has access to it, they need to get the key to make it fully, to really understand that data. That can help in this particular area. So the key is not having the key in that case.
As a last question, I'd like to ask you, when we talk about all of these threats and how the threat landscape has really evolved over the last few years, it's absolutely crazy considering how we're talking about ransomware attacks every month, and how systems have been vulnerable all over the world and brought a port right here in Mumbai to stand still. But what I wanted to ask you was, what is the right approach? So collaboration is one, but as that threat landscape evolves so rapidly, what's the right approach when it comes to cybersecurity?
I always describe it as, as an immune system, right? So we talked before about firewalls or antivirus, and I think that's been the focus for a long time. We've been talking to our customers for the last 4 or 5 years about an immune system with analytics and cognitive in the middle, right? Leveraging that capability to ingest lots of data, find the needle in the haystack. All the cliches apply in this sense, but by immune system, I mean you have to build that analytics capability and then the controls that surround it that help you with the prevention. Controls like patching, like the antivirus, like firewalls, identity management, controlling privileged users, I can go on these and get pretty technical, but they all have to work together, and they need to work together whether it's for a cloud workload, whether it's a workload on your mobile device, like the one in my pocket here, whether it's IoT like you mentioned. I mean, it's a matter of time before someone turns on their car and they're going to get a message that says €500 or $500 to get your car back, because there's going to be ransomware sitting in the car and it's not going to decrypt your automobile until you pay money.
Does that worry you, Mark?
We have advanced researchers thinking through scenarios just like that one, and you can go further and further onto medical devices and everything, right? So, but every one of those, when you look at how to solve it, it's the same immune system. It's analytics. It's thinking about the users on the systems and how to lock down their privilege. It's thinking about data security, the applications and how well they're built on those systems. It's thinking about how to update and patch and handle the infrastructure elements. There's a common thread to each of them. That's this immune system, and that's where I've been focusing our customers on, not one piece of it, but the whole thing working together. When you get that right, you have a great WannaCry weekend like we talked about earlier, and you actually get through these things pretty well.
Super, Mark. Thanks so much for talking to us on BloombergQuint. Thank you.
Nice to be here.
Thank you.
Thanks.